Hi everyone, this is Louise from the Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy. I'm the college training manager and my partner Grant Bentley is the principal. We are the founders of Homeopathic Facial Analysis, or HFA for short, which we have researched, tested and shared for more than 25 years now. Eugenie has asked us to give you a sample of some of the information you can expect to experience at our college. This lecture you're about to hear is Grant speaking about HFA in the clinic with an introduction from me. Our college is based in Melbourne, Australia. We've operated since 1989 and we offer online courses to students around the world. To find out more about us, visit our website at vcch.org. Enjoy this lecture, and if it resonates with you, please do get in touch with us via our website vcch.org. Hi everybody, this is Louise Bentley. Eugenie's asked us to give a little bit of a lecture, which is on homeopathy, of course, and our particular methodology, which we call HFA, Homeopathic Facial Analysis. I thought I'd start this lecture or this information talk, and then Grant's going to come in and give some more information. So first of all, a bit of a brief history about who we are. I think that that's always nice for people to understand your background. Our college, Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy, started in 1989, a bricks and mortar college in Melbourne, Australia, till about 2008, when things kind of went a bit pear-shaped in Australia for homeopathy. That's a whole political story that I won't go into, but we decided to go online about that time. And we is Grant Bentley, my partner, who's 35 years in the alternative medicine field as a naturopath and a homeopath, and he's got a few other strings to his bow. And myself, I'm coming up 30 years as a homeopath. So we've done this for quite a long time. We started the HFA project as a research project. Really, Grant started it. I helped him, but got more and more involved along the way. More than 25 years ago now, so in the late 90s. Since then, we've put out 7 books. We've travelled around the world multiple times doing seminars. We've had translations of some of those books into German, Russian, Spanish and Bulgarian. We are of the opinion that HFA has been clinically verified and proven by ourselves, our students and practitioners from more than 25 countries worldwide. So we're very strong in what we deliver, and we have full belief and validation in HFA from a clinical perspective. We have a really busy clinic with very strong outcomes for lots of different problems that many patients bring to the clinic, particularly pandas, which Grant's become a bit of a specialist in from a homeopathic perspective. We have a long waiting list. Our referrals are word of mouth only. We don't really do any marketing and never have for the clinics, so we're pretty proud of how successful it's become. HFA is the cornerstone of that clinic. We have done online training since 2010. We just redid all our courses in 2020, 2021 because we wanted to write them for maximum impact at the lowest price with the lowest amount of time that a student needed to study. We understand everyone's super busy, and we've been able to put a whole series of classes together, 50 classes taking about 40 hours, from pure introduction, basic classical homeopathy, introduction of HFA through to an advanced clinical way of prescribing. The format's terrific. It's just great. Our feedback is excellent. It's there for current practitioners. We have practitioners who've even got 20 or more years come and do our course because they want to add a very simple but accurate diagnostic, a miasmatic diagnostic to their practice. We have many students who are already students in other colleges. They might be in years 1, 2, 3 or maybe 4. They just feel they need more confidence, and HFA delivers. They become confident quite quickly, and they can become clinically experienced in a year or less. And I hope Grant will mention that when he speaks, this idea that Kent, I think, put in writing somewhere or said it, and his students repeated it, that you needed at least 10 years experience to be a good homeopath. This is not what we're experiencing with HFA. You can get there in 3, 6, 12 months. The course we've also written for non-homeopaths. We've had a lot of people ask us if they could learn it with us. So we wrote the intro to go with the advanced course so that anybody can just start and come out at the end of their 40 hours with a pretty good degree of competency. Obviously, experience will add more, and you can't replace experience, but you need some good skills to start with. So at the very least, you can treat your family and friends with a degree of confidence to quite a competent standard. So we're very proud that we've been able to achieve that. We're just generally proud of HFA. We believe it's a strong contribution to homeopathy, and we really hope that you will join us in this incredible journey of healing. That's probably enough from me. I want you to listen to Grant now. So hi, Grant. And my question to you is, why is HFA the anchor in your clinic, your very busy clinic? How does it impact you?
Hi, Louise. Okay, so first of all, back to Kent. Yes, it was Kent that did that. He said, but it wasn't 10 years, it was 20.
Oh, sorry, it was 20? My goodness.
He said that it takes you more than 20 years to get out of novice stage.
Oh, wow.
That's what he was saying. Thankfully, that's not true, and we have the students on the board that prove that. Look, 20 years down the track, hopefully you're a better homeopath at the beginning than when you started.
You mean at the end?
Yeah, at the end. I'm sorry, not at the beginning. At the end than when you started. So it's a progressive evolution of knowledge. So that part's good. But in order to be able to get people coming back into your clinic and saying, actually, I feel a lot better, and you go through the checklist of what brought them here in the first place, and they're going, no, that's definitely better, that's definitely better. That does not take you 20 years to reach that. Otherwise, everybody would be out of business, and that's that. But HFA, getting kind of more to the point of your question, has been the centrepiece of getting successful practice. And what it does do, and again, we're talking not just personal experience here as, say, Dr. Dinsdale's testimonial,
which you'll hear at the end of this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, that's just one of many, as you know. I mean, you obviously people who are listening are just going to have to take my word for it. But as you know, that's just one of many. Whether or not you're talking about patients or you're talking about students, that's just one testimonial in a small amount. And like I said, the facial analysis is an absolute centrepiece. So I think what I'll do is that I'll explain as best I can a short version of what HFA is.
Yeah, and what you do. Like, I think people want to know, what is it you actually do?
Okay, so people are very compliant, and then when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about the patients. They're very compliant. We tell them that this is what we need from them, and we need, I think it's about 9 photos now. We need about 9 photos from them. And if I'm wrong there, you can clarify that.
No, it's definitely 9 photos, yep.
And they're all very good, and it usually, it takes them a follow-up or two before they then ask, so why are these photos being done? What do you see when you look at these photos? So the first thing to understand is that these photos have got absolutely nothing to do with general appearance, because what we're doing is we're measuring symmetry, we're measuring angles, lengths, and so on.
Size and structure.
Yeah, size and structure, and so there are, I think, 75-ish facial features that have been documented, and what it's actually about is the absolute bottom line answer is that we're trying to find the miasm of the patient before we give the remedy. So the importance of why we're trying to find the miasm of the patient before we give a remedy is not just because that was Hahnemann's instructions, which it was, by the way.
That's what started you on this pathway.
That's what started me on this pathway, because Hahnemann is very adamant in saying that the miasm of the remedy selected must match the miasm of the patient, otherwise you don't have a full symptom totality. And so my question was, okay, I'll accept you for what you're saying because you're one hell of a smart guy. So if you're basing your 8 to 10 years of experience of miasmatic knowledge, or at least miasmatic inquiry, and this is the conclusion that you're coming to. Of course, he was a homeopath before then, but he was doing just symptom picture only, just as it presented. And it wasn't working deeply enough. So that's the basis of the whole miasm theory, is that I would give a remedy based on the symptom totality of the presenting patient, and then even if it was a good match, it was not giving the deep relief that I really would have wanted it to do, I being Hahnemann. Right, so then he started thinking, okay, well, what's holding it back? Why isn't it as deep as what it should be? And that was really the beginning of the miasmatic theory. There is something there in every chronic disease prescription or a constitutional prescription that needs to be included in order for that to be a deep working remedy. And that missing something was the miasm. Now, I absolutely agree with it. It's proved itself as a theory to be true over and over and over again. If you just do a symptom totality remedy versus symptom totality plus miasm, the miasmatic remedy is infinitely deeper, more long-lasting than just symptom totality alone. So Hahnemann was right. But why was he right? I mean, okay, he went down a model that was more about, okay, well, maybe there's an inherited disease and all this. Now, I wrote a book about this called How Aphorism 27 Changed the World. And there are some things where are absolute truths and some which are observations and speculations. And some of Hahnemann's miasmatic stuff was speculation, and I put out why. That doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. It means that it's open for different interpretations. And so I created one of those different interpretations because I don't see it as peeling off sedimentary layers or anything like that. A soric remedy is soric because it has a centrifugal action, meaning that it throws the disease from the centre where it can do the most damage, because that's where all our vital organs are, out to the periphery where it can do the least harm. That's what that centrifugal action is, what we call SORA. But that's not a disease. That is the body trying to protect itself.
It's an action.
It's an action. And that action is in place, and it's really important that that action is in place because it's a way that the body protects that vital inner core by throwing it to the periphery. Now it suddenly makes sense why you need to choose a soric remedy for a soric patient, because that is their survival program. It doesn't analyse, it doesn't work out what will be the best for you. It's a program. Like the vital force in Aphorism 9, he talks about how the mind is completely different from the vital force. The vital force is a program that can be manipulated. That's what homeopathy does. Right? So Hahnemann has worked out a way that he can trick the program of nature. That's why he calls them artificial morbific diseases, right? That's what a remedy is. It's tricking the body into thinking that it's a similar disease, and then using the laws of nature where two similar diseases can't live in the same body at the same time. The stronger overpowers the weaker. So an artificial morbific agent, being the remedy, is the stronger similar disease, but it doesn't drain your life force, right? So potentization becomes really important because that's the way that we make our artificial disease stronger than the one that you're suffering from, the natural one that you're suffering from. The difference between a natural and an artificial disease is that a natural disease, if you take a virus, for example, gets inside your cells, uses your body's life force, uses your own body's life force. And so, which is part of the reason that you feel so drained when you're sick. Only part of it. There's a longer explanation to it, but that's essentially how it works. Whereas when you have a remedy is not a life force. It's not alive. It's a memory, right? So yes, the vital force is going to see it as a disease, but it doesn't know it's artificial because it's not conscious. It's a program. So it sees it as same as a disease because it's an influence. And it's the similar because we know it's similar because if you've done a good repertorization, we know that the frequency of the remedy must be similar to the frequency of the virus because they're both producing the same symptoms. Right? Similis curenta. So the difference, though, between vital let's just say natural or viral disease versus a remedy. So a remedy does not get into your cells and drain your body's energy. So even though it's artificial, it's taken as real, it's stronger, so the stronger repels the weaker and it leaves the body, in a state of recovery because it's eliminated the natural virus from your system without taking up your body's own vital force, and then it just peters out on its own because it's not alive. So once it's used its own energy, it just dissipates.
It's brilliant, really, when you think about it, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, homeopathy is absolutely incredible. Far more, when you really stop to think about it, the intricacies of this and how it works is just unbelievable. But one of the things that Hahnemann did notice, though, is that if you didn't use what he termed to be a miasmatic remedy and you just said, okay, tell me your symptoms, and then someone tells you, I've got a hammering headache, I'm really thirsty, and, I feel a bit grief-stricken because of 1, 2, 3 or 4, well, then it's not surprising NatMer is going to come up. But is NatMer cover the miasm of that patient? Now, one of the things that has happened, and I really don't like it, is that over homeopathic history, some people are trying to kid us a little bit that all people have all miasms in us and all remedies have all miasms in us. Now, that's not what Hahnemann said. That's absolutely not Hahnemann was saying. I don't believe any of that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you're just back to the symptom totality now. Right, and that's just...
Which is kind of where a lot of people have ended up.
Yes, and it just defeats the whole purpose of why Hahnemann wrote chronic diseases, why, even when you look at the 6th edition of the Organon, it's essentially, really, it's just about the LM potencies and the miasms, right? I mean, it's further extension on it because he's completely convinced about it. And I'm completely convinced about the importance of putting the miasm into the selection of the remedy. And so each remedy for a chronic case must be the symptom totality plus the miasmatic totality, and the two have to be combined. And why do you have to do that? If you're not used to homeopathy, well, then the question becomes, well, why do I need to have that same motion? Let's just stick with Sora. Why is it important to have a psoric remedy? Well,
for a psoric person.
Well, if I choose Thuya or Sepia for that person, and that means they are both psychotic remedies, right? Or what we would call red remedies, because we try and get away from these,
We have
these
a colour
horrible,
coding.
horrible names.
Yeah, we have a coding of colour rather than pathology.
Yeah, rather than pathology, for a couple of reasons. One, just the linguistics of it all being in these horrible pathologies is not nice for patients to hear. And secondly, because I don't think they're a disease of itself. It's a cure. It's the body itself, that patient's vital force is trying to restore harmony and balance to its organism, right? And so as a result of that, if we double up on that attempt for the body to follow its own pathway, then now we're speeding up the healing mechanism of every patient. But if I choose something like sepia or thuya or whatever it might be, metarinum for a patient, and they're soric, then I'm choosing remedies that might have the totality. But when you look at the psychotic or the red miasm, that tries to protect the vital inner core by cordoning off an insubstantial or a less consequential area of the body and imprisoning this virus inflammation or infection and walling it off so it doesn't become systemic. So why would you even do that? Well, why wouldn't everything be soric? Well, because throwing stuff out from the centre to the circumference is really energy expensive. And not everyone has that surplus of energy. And so what nature is doing is trying to hedge her bets and coming up with different defence strategies, because no matter what is thrown at us as a species, some individuals are going to survive and then restart the whole process again.
So can you explain, given that you've done Sora, and there's three primary miasms, the action of Sora, which was outward, the action of psychosis, which is circular. What about the action of syphilis? How can that be protective?
Well, first of all, you've got to get away from it being syphilitic. I understand where Hahnemann originally came from. He came from this idea where he saw that syphilitic parents had children that bore the stigma of that syphilis, right? Even if they didn't have actual syphilis, they still had consequences. And this is, in fact, what got me onto it in the first place, because they talk about there was a whole sub-branch back in those days, and thankfully we don't need it, called clinical syphilology, which is kind of hard to say, but what it essentially does is that it looks at the children and grandchildren of syphilitic, or it looked. It doesn't. But
they literally had the pathology. But you find, in life, there are people that are dominantly syphilitic that have not had syphilis in the family.
No, not at all. But what got me into it is that in this book it describes how grandchildren and children of syphilitics would have wider set eyes. They would have dome foreheads. They would have higher hairlines and so on. And so I started thinking, well, if that's the case, and let's just say it's not. See, I came to the conclusion that it isn't a disease much later on, right? So I developed the philosophy afterwards, after I saw my clinical results improve, and I mean dramatically. The way that I used to practice was what I would call a classical approach, and I did that for a long time, which is a sort of a Kantian and a number of other sort of more contemporary type of authors, where essentially what you're trying to do is match a profile, particularly personality-based, a profile of a patient to a remedy. So you've got, a bit like Tyler-esque, the calcarb person, the phosphorus person, the this, that, and the other person, which I'm going to say absolutely outright. So I just don't believe it now.
It's so limited, isn't it?
It's not to say that it isn't true as such, but what it is going to do is that if you focus on that, you're going to miss the other 90 out of 100 that still need calc carb but are not fair, fat and flabby.
And they just don't look like the picture. They could be marathon runners or skinny, fast action. I mean, but they've still got enough of the totality of calc carb, and they've got the miasm of calc carb that it comes together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so you have to get away from this idea that a remedy is what you are, back into a remedy is what you need, right? So you need a remedy to get you out of a groove that you've got yourself into and your vital force just can't seem to get itself out of. And as a result of that, pathologies start to develop and so on. I mean, that's a whole area I can go into if you want to, of how pathology develops. But essentially, what it is now is that I see each miasm or what I will often call colour groups or even survival mechanisms or instincts. They're all interchangeable terms. I see them all as pathways of which the body take or utilise to restore balance and eradicate disease from the body. So when you talk about syphilis, what good come of syphilis? Well, if you're actually talking about the illness, well, nothing good comes from contracting syphilis. But if you're talking about an inward motion as a defence system, because outward motion is psora, inward motion is blue or syphilitic, and circular motion is red or psychotic. Well, to the question of what good comes out of inward motion, well, you're withdrawing energy from the periphery where you don't need it, because what you do need to do is you need to bolster the vital organs when you're sick. And so what it does is that people with inward motion are prepared to sacrifice these more peripheral areas to ensure that these vital organs are all bathed and protected by energy as best as it possibly can do. Now, you see that constantly in nature. This isn't just human beings, and I'm not making this up. You see this every wintertime with bears. You see it every wintertime with trees, right? So trees lose their leaves in order to withdraw all the energy into the trunk and the root system. Right? And that way the tree stays alive no matter how harsh it gets.
But not all trees, and that's what's interesting.
No, not all trees.
Some people do the inward, some people do the circular, some people do the outward, and then there's 4 other groups that do.
Not all animals hibernate either.
No, and it's an example. It's never all, it's some. And so you can work out from the face the dominant miasm. There are 7 miasms, the 3 primaries, 3 duos, which are 2 primaries joining in equal balance, and then there's the 7th one, which is all 3 of the primary miasms present. You can tell it from the face, and it's just such a wonderful blueprint to start a case with, because then you just do the totality of the case, repertorise. We have allocated probably over 100 remedies now, nearly all the polycrests. There's a couple that still elude us, but pretty much all of the polycrests and a few of smaller remedies. You've worked out the dominant miasm, you've tested them on patients where the face is the same dominant miasm. The results are good, and so we publish those in our books, and there's information on the website. But basically, as a process clinically, you're looking at 9 photos to determine the miasm, and you're doing a very classical case-taking, get the dominant symptoms, do the repertorisation.
Well, not only that, you can go back to the real classical, because if you're talking about the classics, right? Classics means that you go back to the origins, the real trendsetters.
Yeah.
Well, in homeopathy, who's a bigger trendsetter than Hahnemann? Seriously. So if you're talking about really being classical, Hahnemann never spoke about that the personality of the remedy has to perfectly suit like a glove on a hand the patient that you're treating. What he said was that the mentals can become important in a case for when you've got a discerning feature after, now this is really important to remember, after the generals of the case have been done. Right? So what he meant was, and I think he even gives this as one of his examples, is that if you have two remedies that are both suitable, so you do the generals of the case, remembering what he called a PQRS too, by the way. A PQRS in Hahnemann's mind were, remember he said, in order to elicit the PQRSs of a case, you need to get the person to stand up, walk around, sit down, check the time, do all these sort of, what's he talking about? He's talking about modalities, right? He's not talking about the fact that there's a cornstalk fiddle in your head like that's in calc fleur, right? He's not talking about those absolutely crazy things that you're never going to be able to find again, and that people are never going to say in a word perfect way, so you can't look it up anyway, even if you do get it. What he was talking about is that he was talking about the modalities of the case are the PQRSs. Why? Because they define what's going on. So after you've got the generals of the case with all the relevant modalities, if you've got, say, and this is where he gives the example of Nux and pulsatilla are the two main ones left over, you can then use the personality to determine which one of those two.
I don't even think he says personality. I think he implies more just a mind symptom.
It's a mind symptom. And yes, you're absolutely right there. And it's a symptom, meaning that it is a change in demeanour.
Since they got sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Since
they had
you've
their
got
stress.
sick, right.
Yeah.
So a normally placid person who turns aggressive, that aggression in, or violent rage or whatever it is, now that violent rage becomes a symptom, right? So because it's a symptom, then you can repertorise on it. But if you're a normally placid, fairly easygoing person, then you don't look up placidity as a rubric.
So, in fact, your personality is separate to what we're looking at. You're looking at an aberrant change in your emotions or mindset since the stress or the pathology has begun. That might help as another rubric. But you can do a great case without any mind or emotions.
You can, but then what happens now is that you now beckons the question, well, if that's the case, then why have we gone down the pathway of such mental domination of homeopathy? Well, the answer to that is because we had no way of defining the internal miasm up until HFA. Right, so what would happen is that yourself, when you do the generals of the case, even when you do modalities. So let's just say the person has, I don't know, a burning pain and remember, a burning pain isn't meant to be, only becomes a general when it really affects about 3 areas of the body, right? So person has a burning headache, they have burning behind the eyes, and they have this cough that every time they cough there's a burning pain afterwards. So internal burning pain becomes a general. And then you get a couple of modalities. But modalities and generals generally are fairly big when it comes to how many remedies are represented. So when you do your process of elimination, which is all a repertorisation is, you're often left with, 20 or so remedies that will cover the generals of the case. Now, you can't say to patients, give me 20 goes and I might be able to get this. So, and then what the other thing that used to happen is if you read old classic books like Clark's Dictionary and all these real classics that if you don't know Clark's Dictionary, if you haven't read the organon at least 3 or 4 times, if you don't know who Bonninghausen is, if you don't know other people like Farrington, or you don't know Kent or Tyler, then you don't know homeopathy. If you haven't read these, so I would seriously suggest that you go back and read these classic books, including Stuart Close, including Herbert Roberts. These are classic books. And if you don't know the classics, you don't know the system. You don't know where it's coming from. So anyway, back to the question of how did the mentals develop and come to such a state of priority when Hahnemann himself was saying that really the PQRSs, i.e. modalities, are more important. It's really because of Kent. Because what Kent started to say was that he was saying that you can select a remedy and it doesn't work. And in a lot of cases, it's a well indicated that remedy that not only doesn't relieve, as written all the way through Clark and so on. This is why you get complementary, follow-on, all this kind of stuff that's in Clark's dictionary. It not only fails to relieve, but sometimes it aggravates too. Now, the problem with aggravations is that it's all over the internet and half the patients expect to get, a big aggravation and so on. And so I'm going off on a tangent now, but to get back to the point that I was trying to make with Kent is that he says himself, when you choose a remedy just based on the symptom totality and it doesn't work, it means that you're missing a finesse, a fineness, right? And that fineness is generally in Kent's mind a mental.
And yet, it's actually just the structure of your face. It's right in front
but
of you.
he didn't know that.
No.
Right. So what he's done is that he said there must be something that is missing in the practitioner, not in the patient, where this practitioner is failing to understand the fineness or the finesse that is involved in fineness of that really small differentiation in personality between, say, causticum and Fossack.
And you know why? You think about it, just the history tells you straight away. I mean, Hahnemann died in 1843. I've probably got these dates wrong, but I'll go by memory, and I think Kent was born in 1849, but Kent died in 1916. And what's interesting about that is the 6th edition of the Organon was not published till 1922.
No, that's right.
Like,
He had no.
He didn't know about it. So
to
what
it.
he was doing, he didn't actually know all of Hahnemann's final miasmatic ideas, which weren't fully developed even then, but they were further developed than what Kent was aware of.
No, that's exactly right. But Kent had to come up with, because he didn't know. Kent had to come up with, in his own mind, why are these really well-indicated remedies not working? And he came up with it was the differences in personality or the mentals.
And so off it went.
Yeah, and so off it
100
went.
years,
and we
yeah.
have gone off on this same tangent where now you have people saying, oh, well, if you were a good homeopath, you'd instantly know that this was causticum and not Fossack because, they wore orange socks and, Fossack would never wear
No, we
orange
do not
socks.
subscribe to any of that. We've learned. This is the thing,
But that's become an industry.
I know
right?
it has.
I mean, that's become an industry. And so what HFA does, though, is it takes you back to Hahnemannian homeopathy because it takes you back to symptom totality, and then with that symptom totality, making sure that the remedy that is that glove over the hand of the symptoms only also
has the
action that the person's own vital force is using. And that way we double up on their vital force's action to be able to eliminate and protect and harmonise.
And you get lovely results. Now, do you get 100%? No, but we run at a pretty solid 80 plus, sometimes higher, depending. I mean, every case is different, and some cases are really deeply entrenched and they're going to be harder to move. But if you've got a bunch of patients with, migraines and skin problems and stomach issues and, all those kind of standard sort of things, you can get a pretty high success rate.
Yeah, the problem with that though, Louise, and it is a problem, is that people have different ideas of what success is. Yeah, I remember one time when we were doing a talk in Europe, Holland, I think it was, and we were staying with Ari there for a while, and he was saying, but a lot of homeopaths claim 80%, and he's right. We do. A lot of people claim 80%. So it's really difficult to know. Well, his actual words was, if so many people are getting 80%, how come there's so many people sick? So, which is kind of true. But you also have to understand that people have different ideas of what success is to claim that 80%. So when I'm talking about HFA, if you come in with deep depression and you come in with migraines, and if you're a female, your periods are all over the place and you can't sleep, and then you might have, I don't know, a little bit of digestive disturbance and a little bit of skin complaints. What I mean by 80% is that depression and those migraines and that sleeplessness, they all have to be fixed. So the
markedly improved.
The central core has to all be improved. And it has to be improved in a constitutional way. So you have to define what a constitutional is. And a constitutional is a remedy that treats more than one symptom at the same time. Right?
It treats you.
It treats you. Because when you're getting a whole lot of symptoms coming through, it's because your energy levels are out of balance, right? So when your energy levels go out of balance for too long a period of time, your brain then sort of says this is a really stressful situation, and you go into quite literally a state of fight and flight. Right. So, and then the problem with that is that once you go into that state of fight or flight, then fight or flight is all about immediate danger, which means that the body's now got to second all the energy that it normally would allow for healing and growth and repair, and it's got to give it to the nervous system to stay on edge. Right, because it's looking around and your immune system's going crazy, and it's looking around for an enemy. It can't find one, but it keeps getting messages that there is one. And so what a remedy does is that it brings that energy into homeostatic range, making the fight or flight, internal fight or flight switch off. So now the energy that's inside a person can now be used for productive rather than just protective.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it over and over in so many cases, and sometimes it's a miracle, sometimes it takes a few months. It's a step-by-step process. Every case is different, and we still look at obstacles to cure. We look at what are you eating, how are you exercising, what's your environment like? Can anything be changed there that could be more positive?
Isn't that Hahnemannian too?
Absolutely Hahnemannian. You have to do that as well. That's it. But if you can start with a good remedy, people then have the balance and the energy to start doing better things for themselves. You notice that a lot. They start going to the gym, they join a dance class, they start the craft they've been meaning to do for years, or they just start getting on better with family members or friends. Things just go better when their energy's better, as well as their body and their symptoms. And it's a lovely lock and key.
Yeah. So I guess back to the original question of what HFA provides is that it provides you a formula that gives you, I guess, a confidence.
Yeah.
As a practitioner, what you would do is even when things don't go right, HFA gives you the sequence of what to do to start again.
Yeah, where to look, what to check on.
Yeah.
And you do have to do that with some cases, there's no doubt. You just have to review it because you know. That's another thing I like about the process. You know when a case is good and you know when it isn't. And you know what you have to do to get it to the better part, to the better pathway. It's a lovely thing. I mean, I think all credit to you because it was your brain that looked at the faces, that read the old books, where the facial structure had been mentioned sort of in passing that it might be related to the miasm, and you took that further and further and you have just developed it to such a fine art. It's an extraordinary method. I really, really hope that this podcast that's being shared with Homeopathy Hangout will impact people to come and look at the site, to look at what's happening
and to
there.
understand that it is a method. That's the key. It's not about trying to spend 20 years developing yourself to the prestige of whatever practitioner you're emulating to be. It's about understanding that this is a real process and that if you follow it, you will get results. And if you don't, it's because you're making a mistake somewhere on the homeopathic assembly line, somewhere on the HFA assembly line. So go right back to the beginning and start again. And sure enough, you get somewhere.
So it means you take responsibility. You're not just looking at some toothpaste or coffee might have mucked up the case.
No, I've never believed that.
No, it's really, it gives you self-confidence to take on pretty much any case. It gives you good communication skills to deal with different patients. They're happy. Once they just get in there and get that maybe first, about 50% of people start to improve on the first remedy, which is amazing. But sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 goes to get there, and there's a few people that are a little longer than that. But to see something turn around, to see their lives, their health, their state, their emotional state, to see everything turn around, it really is an incredibly rewarding thing. And I say this because I'm the training manager and I talk to students. And I say to them, look, you don't have to, go into clinic with this idea that you've got to see hundreds of patients. For many people, that's not realistic. For some, it is. For you, Grant, like it's your income. It's huge, like you're an incredibly busy practitioner. But for other people, it might be, look, I'll help a few people in my family, and that's worth doing 40 hours of training and a reasonably moderate fee for that. Certainly a lot less than the average course.
My patient load's huge. I don't know whether my income is
Well,
huge.
but your income is solid and it's respectable, and you're pleased with it.
I'm actually pretty cheap by
That's true.
When you look at what other homeopaths charge. But you know why I've never done that? I've never done that because I've never wanted homeopathy to be the darling of the rich.
Yeah.
I've always because some of these families, as you well know, I need to treat more than one child in this family, and that doesn't even include the mum, who's usually in a state of shock and stress herself.
Yeah.
But I've never wanted to be price prohibitive in that, but that also means that we've got so many people. I mean, what you told me the waiting list.
It's pretty decent. You stopped taking patients, 6 months ago, and we've already got more than 100 sitting there, which maybe for some people isn't a lot, but believe me, it's quite a lot. But what I was saying to this prospective student the other day is that you can learn this and maybe get yourself a remedy, which is always great, or just at least know your miasms so you can work with 1 or 2 remedies as needed, one at a time. But sometimes you do need to move to a different remedy if things change. But it means that you can go out with confidence and start helping a few family members, perhaps a couple of friends. You might get some referrals. You can have just a nice business with only 5 appointments a week, and that's going to supplement your income. And all that training that you've done as a homeopaths are an incredibly idealistic lot. they're usually really good people who want to do something good. You mean you're going against the grain, you're going outside of convention, you're taking a risk, and we've all been there. That's why we're here talking today. We took a huge risk to become homeopaths and to stay in it and to develop a new method and to share it. Like, it's not easy bringing up a new idea, but, this is so solid. We just almost felt obliged to continue to share it, and here we are. But you can make it something small for yourself. You can make it medium. You can make it big. It's an incredible thing to bring HFA into your homeopathic process. And I don't really hardly know of anybody that hasn't been able to fulfill that and get the positive feedback. Like, we've had some amazing student results and people from all around the world, and it's just been fantastic. So that's why we're here today, doing this sort of promo, sharing the information.
And that anyone can do it. Once you learn how to do it, anyone can do it. You don't have to be this sort of quasi-mystic that's picking up on things. It is a process. And once you know that process, once you know, and don't, there's this sort of, I remember someone once saying to us that, oh no, I've heard of HFA, but I prefer something deeper. You have no idea the depth that this provides. But you don't necessarily need that depth of wisdom of how this works.
Or to apply it, yeah.
In a clinical environment. Like, it doesn't necessarily apply to most cases, but to know how it works is incredibly deep. There's nothing shallow about this at all.
No.
That just shows a complete misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we do our best. We've got our podcast, which is going really nicely, which is Soul and Survival, the name is based on the book you wrote, Soul and Survival, which is your philosophical and psychological interpretation of what HFA means. Like, why does it even work at all? What could it actually mean in real human and historical terms? And you've done a beautiful job explaining that. It's all your own theoretical stuff. You haven't referenced it or anything. You haven't based it on anybody else's work. It's purely your creative interpretation of what you've seen in the clinic and why it would work, and that's Soul and Survival. So it's been an amazing journey. It sounds like we're kind of ready for the... we're getting a little close to the end, as in we are well into retirement age now. So we are looking for young and vibrant people to take up the mantle.
Think, and thank you for the plug about and the compliment about Soul and Survival. But I think that if you're interested into how we kind of got to this point, I actually think Aphorism 27 is
it's a lovely book,
a better starting book.
Yeah. Well, it's your link between the organon and HFA. You examine both. That's hence how Aphorism 27 changed the world. And people have said that's the one that really gets them thinking about it. There's different ways you can do it. You can start with Soul and Survival. You can start with that. You can get the HFA workbook and just start working on faces. But bottom line is, if you apply it properly, you will be getting strong clinical results in 3 to 6 months and 12 months, solid. And everybody needs a bit of experience, particularly the psychology of interacting with patients. I think basically listen, be kind, but do remember to ask direct questions.
Do you know the best psychology for a patient?
What's that?
Get a result.
Oh, get a result. Oh, yeah. They'll love you forever. Yeah. Makes life easy.
You can go into all the psychoanalysis that you want, but what patients really want
want to feel better.
Is that they want a result for either themselves or their children. And that's where HFA really comes in. The psychoanalysis process might be interesting to some people, but in the end, if you want a clinic, you need results.
Yes.
That's it. And HFA is the one that'll give you results.
Yep, absolutely. And we've got testimonials on our side too. We're not the only ones saying this, so Yeah, we're very grateful for the people that have taken the risk and joined us, and we're pretty confident that there'll be a lot more before we're ready to hang up the shingle.
Okay, well, that's, I think, enough.
I reckon it is.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone, and thanks, Eugenie, for this opportunity. Thanks for listening to this short promo about Homeopathic Facial Analysis, or HFA. Here is a lovely testimonial recently sent to us from one of our practitioners, Dr. Sandy Dinsdale, who is based in New Zealand. Sandy wrote, HFA is a unique clinical assessment tool, bringing the advantages of consistency, reliability, and objectivity to my homeopathic work. The intelligently designed system is user-friendly, well-taught, and has literally transformed my clinic. The future of homeopathy has been illuminated by the observation that genetic influences shape Hahnemann's miasms. I offer my sincere thanks and congratulations to Grant and Louise Bentley for their extraordinary achievement. To my colleagues, I say, Ode Sapere. Thanks, Sandy. To find out more, visit our college website, Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy, vcch.org. You'll find case studies, info about HFA, books, essays, and our own podcast called Soul and Survival.